Let the good times roll.
Good morning, this is Patrick Bora, and I just wanted to have a little quick discussion. There were some articles and some discussions by Peek Around the Corner about Fresno State coming to the Big 12. And so I wanted to look at this article and listen to Brett Yormark to see why that's probably not a realistic probability. This article, of course, is kind of pro-Pac, so understand some of what it's going to say is coming from their spin. But he says here, Big 12's pro rata clause reportedly applies only to Power 5 schools, ESPN's part of media rights deal. So Fox does not have a pro rata with the Big 12. That doesn't. They said that Fox is unwilling to budge later on in this. That doesn't necessarily mean that. Nobody knows. So the Big 12 can't just add any school to force the pro rata clause to kick in. With rumblings about the Big 12 possibly adding Gonzaga, some extra content has been reported about the pro rata clause included in the conference's new media rights deals. First, as reported by Michael Smith of the Sports Business Journal on Tuesday, the pro rata clause only applies to Power 5 schools. Gonzaga, of course, isn't a Power 5 school, so that means if the Bulldogs join the Big 12, the pro rata clause won't kick in. The size of the overall pie won't grow, and payouts for each school will shrink from the reported $31.7 million per year. San Diego State is another school that isn't a Power 5 conference, and in a column detailing the Aztecs' attempts to earn an invite to a Power 5 conference, John Canzano revealed another detail about the Big 12's pro rata clause. It only applies to ESPN's chunk of the media rights agreement, which is around 60% of the total $31.7 million value. Not only is San Diego State not a Power 5, neither is Fresno State. So all this applies to both. It says doing some back of the envelope math, something George Kliavkoff is very good at, around $240 million per year paid out by ESPN. That's about $20 million per school, with Fox paying $140 million per year, or roughly $11.7 million per school. This means that even if the Big 12 expands with Power 5 members, only the roughly 2/3 of the annual media rights value paid by ESPN would increase, with Fox no budging on their chunk. Well, that's not really necessarily true. We haven't gone back to Fox. We don't have anybody to go back to Fox with as the Big 12. So once Brett Yormark gets a chance, if Brett Yormark goes back to Fox perhaps with some good Pac-12 teams like Arizona, Colorado, Utah, or whatever, then it's, who knows? We don't know if Fox is not going to budge. We don't know. So this is pretty messy, and if you're the Big 12, the article continues, it puts you in a tough place when it comes to expansion. Rating the AAC for more schools like the Big 12 did when it added future members, UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston, will not increase the size of the pie, but will decrease or dilute. It won't be additive, it'll be dilutive. It'll decrease the overall payouts to schools. The same would happen if the Big 12 plucked schools from Conference USA, Mountain West, or Sun Belt. With the Big 10 and SEC effectively poach-free, because of its massive media rights deals, that leaves the ACC, whose schools are largely deemed a better fit for any potential Big 10 or SEC expansion, and the Pac-12 as feeding grounds for the Big 12. Well, first of all, the ACC gore's kind of keeping everybody out. I mean, they're making noise over there, but I don't know how they would ever break that. So 2036 pops around and the ACC decides to break up. The idea that they're all going to the Big Ten or the SEC is ludicrous. The fact of the matter is teams like Pitt, teams like Virginia Tech and such, they won't have opportunities to go to one of those two. But the Big 12 will be a good landing spot for them in the future. So disagree with the article on that level. As it always was going to, what it comes down to in this media rights cycle is the Pac-12's negotiations. That silences the fact that we don't have any Pac-12 media rights deal, and still the Crickets are playing out in the fields. So if they're able to get an acceptable deal, we can put a pin in further expansion for the next few years. You notice he didn't even say long term. Why? Because Oregon and Washington aren't going to sign a long-term GOR. If negotiations keep dragging on, the conference could get plundered, and that would be that. Okay, so now let's listen to Brett Yormark on his position with expansion.
And then the third, priority for me has been to explore expansion for all the right reasons. As I've said before, it's got to be additive, it's got to be accretive, but we are focused on it, and we're exploring every and all possibility. And
yeah, Barry Trammell with the Oklahoman. When you say any expansion needs to be additive, are you talking about economically? Or are you talking about branding? Are you talking about strength? What exactly?
Every respect. It's got to be the right.
Every respect or all respects?
Well, it's got to be a good cultural fit first and foremost. We have a like-minded board, like-minded institutions, so we don't want to compromise that. So we need to, whoever comes in, ultimately, it has to have. There needs to be a cultural fit. Obviously, we look at geography, because I think that matters too. I've said it before, we want to be truly a national conference from a brand perspective, but also geographic footprint. So that matters. Performance matters, both academic and on the field and on the court. So we think about a lot of things when we explore expansion, not just one metric, but a couple.
And you also mentioned, I saw some quotes from you, and I want to make sure I have them right here in mid-July. We are open for business. It's fair to say a lot of teams are interested in joining the Big 12. As we look at the future of college football, where it feels like there are going to be these teams making all these moves and all that, where does the Big 12 sit in all of this right now in your mind as far as acquiring other teams?
Well, when I said open for business, it was more of a holistic approach to we're no longer going to be stagnant. We're exploring every and all opportunities, whether it's expansion, how to diversify revenue, potentially accelerating our TV negotiations. But from an expansion standpoint, we're vetting all options. That doesn't mean that we're going to expand further than the 4 teams, Houston, Cincinnati, UCF, and BYU. But if the opportunity presents itself where it's additive and creates value for our conference, we're going to pursue it.
Okay, that was Brett Yormark, and clearly, he said that it's going to be additive and not dilutive. When they look at adding teams, they have several factors that they're looking at, and basically being additive is important. Well, since ESPN has a Power 5 only pro rata and Fox doesn't really have a pro rata, how would the Big 12 add Fresno State? I mean, San Diego State has some more value in the sense that it actually is in the basketball Final Four. It also has a pretty good football team. It has had some success. They built a new stadium. There's a lot of things going on there that Brett Yormark might be able to go back. I'm not going to say it's impossible. Options open. And if the Pac-12 does kind of crumble because their media rights deal, whatever that will be, whenever that will be, is trash, and then surely I'm sure some teams like Arizona and Colorado would jump. And in that case, they'll have a landing spot because Brett Yormark's made it clear he wants to go out west. So that's where we're at. And like I said, with Gonzaga, that's not an issue. Like this article made it sound like, well, we would have to break up the 31.7. No. Gonzaga's basketball only. So they won't be taking a giant chunk. They won't be getting a full $31.7 million because they're only coming in as basketball members. So they'll be getting the equal chunk of the basketball revenue. And that's going to be spun off in the next agreement. So all that's why I think Brett Yormark wants to spin it off is so he can look at basketball only schools. Like Gonzaga. So that's it for today, and I appreciate you guys listening. Please like the video, and if you really like the videos, please subscribe. It just adds more viewers to be able to see the content. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one for today, and if anything breaks, I'll share it. Thanks a lot. Have a good one. Bye.
Big 12 open for business.
There is no doubt the Big 12 is open for business. We will leave no stone unturned to drive value for the conference.